Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Boom Boom Reviews Stuff. And I am back for another review, and today I'm going to be reviewing the television show 1899, which is streaming currently on Netflix. Okay, before I get into this, I have to say that I'm going to be spoiling all kinds of things for you. So if you haven't watched the show and you want to watch the show, I would highly recommend coming back and watching this video after you've watched the show, because I'm going to ruin things for you. Because I think there are things that we have to talk about. I have got to talk about this show. This show is like driving me crazy. I have been asked by several people, would you recommend this show? Yes, I think the show is worth watching. I think I'm going to put in the title something like skip or binge. I would definitely binge this show. I binge watched it in like 2.5 days. And I really didn't think that I would. The first 2 episodes were so boring to me that I was like, I'm not really sure. First of all, I don't like time era pieces, you know, and this one, the majority of it takes place in 1899, and so I was like, I don't really enjoy this. And obviously it takes place in 1899, but there's a reason for that, okay? But I was like, I don't really enjoy all of this, and I don't know what I think about it, and I had really no idea what direction it was going in, right? So let me read for you what the show is about. Hold on just a second, let me get my glasses on. Online here it says, immigrants on a steamship traveling from London to New York get caught up in a mysterious riddle after finding a second vessel adrift on the open sea. So what it's about is that all of these people from all over the world are on this steamship, right? That's traveling from London to New York City and on a 7-day trip. And while they are at sea, they start getting these signals from this ship called the Prometheus, which has been missing for 4 months. And nobody knows what happened to this ship or anything like that. So they go to this ship, and when they go to this ship, the only thing that they find, the only surviving member that they find is this little boy that has this pyramid thing, this black pyramid. And you have no idea what this black pyramid is for, okay? You really don't know for most of the show. And then there's another guy that I don't know if he swims across or what he does, but he like climbs up the side of the boat, and like he comes over from the Prometheus, but they don't know that at the time, right? Okay, so the main characters in the show are this woman named Mara, and she's like the main character, and you know that she was in some kind of like mental health facility or something like that, and it looks like she was like, had like restraints because she has these things around her wrists, and she's like really violent memories of that. And then she has a letter from her brother telling her to meet her in New York City, and so that's why she's supposedly on the steamship. And then the captain, who is like, he's having all these dreams of like his daughter and his wife. Apparently his wife set fire to their house and killed herself and their daughters. And so it's all of these people, and all of these people are, you know, on there for different reasons. I have to say, one of my first thoughts about this show was that I felt like it kind of played off a social stereotype. Well, first of all, there was like the gay couple that was supposed to be like the priest.